I wanted to understand more about how yoga brings body, mind, and spirit together. And Charlie, it was a life changer for me because Jesus met me on the mat, and, I really felt this connection that everything is connected, right?
Yeah.
And that we do have to create balance. And every choice that we make putting in our mouths, every choice that we make with moving our body really matters.
Welcome to the CoachMD podcast. I'm Dr. Charles Glassman, bringing you 3 decades of experience as a physician and a coach. Join us as we navigate the maze of medical advice with real-life stories, empowering you to take charge of your health. In our That Happens segment, guests share transformative experiences, reminding us that we're all human and not just patients. So get ready for a journey into healthcare reimagined, where empowerment and discovery pave the way. Hey, it's Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. In my over 30 years of medical practice, I made it my goal to help you create a strong mind, a healthy body, and an unshakable spirit. And what I've done is started the CoachMD podcast to talk all about those things and to invite guests on my show who really approach their wellness and their health, not so much looking for doctors' opinions, although obviously it's great to have an MD or a medical person who's an advocate. But what I'd like to do in my practice in the past and what I share now is that I never was in a position where I'd like to consider myself someone who'd like to take care of people, but I'd like to give the people the knowledge and the information to help you take care of yourself. And so a lot of times the guests I have on my show are people who have, sometimes even despite medical advice and despite medical people who have given them information or advice, they've looked to approach their health and their wellness in a way where they've done their own research. And as I say, I'd like to help people have strong minds, healthy bodies, and unshakable spirits. And the mind, body, spirit is a very strong component. And if we don't have all of those, our wellness, our health may not be really in balance. And so I'd like to introduce you today to a dear friend of mine who has really embodied that mind, body, spirit approach to life and to wellness and their health. And Rosie has done that in so many different ways, whether it be her fitness, whether it be, and she'll talk a lot about how she's embraced her spiritual life and how she's incorporated that in her journey and her health journey, and has something exciting to share with us too on this broadcast. And I feel really excited to be the one to kind of bring that out into the world so they can see what she's doing. So thanks, Rosie, so much for coming on the CoachMD podcast today. And we look forward to hearing all about what you're doing.
Thank you, Charlie. I mean, it is such an honor to sit here across from you and be able to talk with you about this. I know that I've followed you, read your books, and we're great friends and share a lot of the same outlooks and the same feelings about body, mind, and spirit and how they all work together. So I'm excited to be here and share this time with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. And everybody's journey is different, and everybody has a story to kind of tell, and how they started looking at life and looking at health in certain different ways. I've told my story in the past, and how I, even through medical school, I kind of was gravitating toward a different type of outlook, a more holistic type of outlook. And can you kind of talk about maybe a little bit about that in your life, and what kind of led you to look at your health and wellness and life in a certain way?
Yeah, well, it has been, step by step, a journey that probably started in my early 20s I was always a runner.
Mm.
And my early career, I think it's probably before I met you, Charlie, I was a party planner.
Mm.
So
I didn't know that.
I was,
Right.
I think Melanie knew that because I still did a lot of my planning when the kids were in school. But I was a party planner, and I realized that my life was very unbalanced
Mm.
because I was doing a lot of weddings and bar and bat mitzvahs. And Brian and I, my husband, were like two ships passing in a night because I would basically be home with the kids, work a few hours during the day while they were in school. And then 6 o'clock, I would have to meet with clients, about their
Mm.
parties. And then on the weekends, I was gone all weekend trying to decorate parties and be, on staff as the event planner. And it was tough. It was really hard. And, it took its toll on my body. And I wound up with an autoimmune,
Mm.
Hashimoto's. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's right after my pregnancy with Brandon. So it's been 28 years. And at that point, I vowed to myself that I really wanted to take care of it the most healthy way that I could with diet, nutrition, exercise. And in 28 years, I've only been on medication for 1 year, and that was at the very beginning.
Mm.
Didn't like the way that I felt. And I said, I'm going to do this with lifestyle choices. And that was a beginning for me because as I was healing my body, I started getting more and more interested in it.
Yeah.
And then my son also, Brandon, my youngest son, had asthma. And so I was constantly looking for holistic ways to help. And so I sold my party planning business in 2000 and went back to school and got my master's in nutrition. And then I realized, because I was a runner and I was taking these nutrition classes, I'm like, wow, these are really coming together for me. Like,
Yeah.
I have more energy when my nutrition is better. And then the third part of my wellness came in probably around the same time. I started realizing that I was a little imbalanced in my body, and I started doing yoga,
Mm.
but just very casual here and there.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, I decided, you know what? I really want to understand what this whole yoga thing is about. And so I went for teacher training, not to become a teacher. That wasn't my
Mm.
motive. I wanted to understand more about how the yoga brings body, mind, and spirit together. And Charlie, it was a life changer for me
Mm.
because Jesus met me on the mat, and I really felt this connection that everything is connected, right?
Yeah.
And that we do have to create balance. And every choice that we make putting in our mouths, every choice that we make with moving our body really matters. And
Mm.
so I love
Love
learning,
that.
and then I
Yeah.
love to take that information and pass it on to others, whether it's my friends, my families, my clients. It's just this reciprocal circle of, learning and teaching and doing and
Mm.
living it, because
Wow.
that's really what it is. It's a lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Just, I want to back up a little bit of something you said before. You talked about Hashimoto's and autoimmunity, and I just want for my listeners, I want to sort that out a little bit. Hashimoto's is it affects the thyroid gland, and the thyroid handles our metabolism, basic metabolism in our body. One of the glands that does that, but autoimmunity to me, I've always been interested in that. And I love the fact that you approached it differently. And also with your son, Brandon, how with the asthma also, which can also, in a sense, be an autoimmunity, maybe not so much, but it's similar in the sense that if we think about it abstractly, right? Autoimmunity, it means it's antibodies that are attacking your own body. Now, why would that happen? And nobody really knows. And what we've done in medicine is we've created ways to develop chemicals to stop that, so it's not so robust, it's not so accelerated. But what that does, that has a lot of side effects, because once you stop blocking antibody production, well, if you block antibody, if you blunt your immunity, if you give people immunosuppressants, it does that. It suppresses your immunity to other things that you need to fight. So the fact that you took it in a different direction and actually really cured it itself, it says that, and we think back and say, okay, well, why did her cells want to go against themselves, right? And if you're looking at in kind of and we'll get back and we'll go and discuss how the yoga faith kind of and the mind, body, spirit incorporates that. Why would our bodies, our God-given bodies, turn against ourselves? And a lot of times that has to do, I believe, and I don't have the studies to prove it, but I'm sure they do exist out there, that something in our lifestyle, something in what we're doing, and you said how unbalanced it was, it's almost a rebellion that the body is turning against itself. It's rebelling against itself. So the best way to approach it, and you did that with the nutrition, with lifestyle, with mindfulness, and spirituality is a big part of that. So if we could back up a little bit and tell me what it was like first when you had the diagnosis, and then was it hard for you to implement these interventions, and did you have support with those interventions? Because did you go to a doctor? Did a doctor help you, or did you have to do your own research? And how did you figure out what would be the best way to approach that?
Yeah, so when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I was going to, it was my OB-GYN, who was my, primary at the time.
Yeah.
And so they automatically put me on medication.
Sure. Yeah.
Didn't like the medication. Like I just didn't, I am not a, have something every day person, especially when there's going to be side effects to it. So I gave it a shot. I think they asked me to try it for 2 months. Then they upped it. And then I tried it for 2 more months. They wanted me to see, an oncologist, not an oncologist, endocrinologist.
Yeah.
And so I went to see an endocrinologist, and I wasn't happy with what they were asking me to do. And so I did my own research, but at the time I was also going to a fabulous chiropractor, Dr. Bill Rosenthal. And so, he was the one who really encouraged me, I would say, to look for a natural approach. So it's not like I did it completely on my own and just said, I know nutrition, so I know how to treat this. But in that research, I took lots of classes. I got my holistic, I took lots of herbal classes. I did lots of certifications, and just little by little, it was just one tool in the box, another tool in the box, another tool in the box. And so that's kind of how it happened. It was in stages and steps, but it was really my chiropractor who encouraged me. And then I did do other alternative therapies. I went to an acupuncturist as well, Dr. Ken. And between the two and then my own research, I was able to just, begin changing lifestyles. And you hit the nail on the head, Charlie. I believe that it was stress because I had a very stressful job at the time. I had 12 parties a weekend that I was handling, that I was the event planner for. It was a lot of stress with 2 kids. I was training for marathons. It was I was just burning the candle at both ends, and my body rebelled. Exactly.
Yeah. I talk a bit a lot actually in my writings and stuff about this concept of automatic brain and how it's our kind of our primitive nature, our animalistic nature. And it only really has one purpose, and that's to fight or flee danger, threat, or vulnerability. And that it does it by all means necessary. And sometimes it puts our bodies at autopilot. It does things that we don't want to happen, but it does that. And in a way, an autoimmune situation is our body fighting and fleeing, like you described, the stressful. So it has its roots in biology, and it's reacting to the situation, our environment. And what you said about having a guide, having somebody to help you, and a lot of times we're not going to find that in the conventional medical world, because many doctors, unfortunately, many conventional doctors, Western trained doctors, are going to poo-poo anything that doesn't kind of stick with the company line or what's being done in the community, let's say. And a chiropractor or an alternative medical practitioner, a lot of times, is somebody who you might need to guide you. And it was great for you to kind of set the ball rolling in a sense, because most of the time a regular conventional doctor is not going to say, well, go to a chiropractor. Now, we know that there's a wide range of practitioners, whether it's alternative practitioners, whether it's conventional. When I say wide range, I mean, it's all over the board sometimes, and you can get somebody who really can give you not such great advice on the alternative end, but same thing with the conventional. You can get somebody who's all in on the Western and really not give you great advice. And you did it. You gave it your college try, right? You tried the medications and it wasn't working for you. So, what's really great, and to hear you talk about how you kind of you had a guide, the definitely chiropractor, Dr. Bill, was helping you, but you took it upon yourself to do your own research. And I would really encourage my listeners to do that and to get that information. And I know the Institute for, what was it again? INN? Wait, what was Institute for Integrative Nutrition?
Integrative Nutrition,
right,
yes.
IIN, right. And I remember when
Yeah.
that came on the scene in the late 2000s, and the 2006 or 7 or 8, whatever it was. I remember I knew you were taking that course. I knew some other people were taking that course. I attended a session in New York. I was very impressed by the science, the science behind these nutritional approaches. And so a lot of doctors, they want to see the science, they want to see the studies, and many doctors, and I'm sure if you took this to your conventional doctor, there's no studies that show, I don't, and basically, if you translate that into doctor speak, the translation is, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. When a doctor says, oh, there's no studies that show it, because really in the courses that you were taking, there were lots of studies. Okay, you go on PubMed and you could, some of the approaches that you were doing for your Hashimoto's, you could plug that into PubMed and it'll spit out 1,000 different studies that will talk about nutritional lifestyle approaches to some of these autoimmune diseases. So you kind of took care of that. And I'm kind of curious also with the asthma that Brandon, that some of the things that you might have done with him. Because just, people don't know Brandon, your son, very active, very, great guy. Love Brandon, right? Athletic and smart, and definitely wasn't defined by his illness. Okay. When I first met Rosie and your husband, Brian and Brandon, it was when I was coaching the Little League team. And
Yeah.
I loved Brandon. And you wouldn't know that Brandon was suffering from a medical illness. So many children are brought up being defined by their illness and saying that, oh, I am an asthmatic. They own it. They take ownership
Right.
of it. Their parents say you are an asthmatic. And so they put that on their child, but you didn't want that for Brandon. So what are some of the things that you did that kind of helped him deal with that and allow him to be such have a great childhood?
Yeah, well, exactly what you said. Like, we didn't let that define him because it was something that was happening to him. It wasn't him, it wasn't his, identity.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, because, like you said, I was already in the IIN program at that time. And so I had a lot of support. The first thing that we did was take him off of dairy. And
wow.
that was a game changer.
Wow.
Right. So we took him off of dairy.
Yeah.
We took him off of dairy, and because of all the mucus, his worst asthma would happen, not so much with sports, but when he got sick or his body got worn down or the seasons, right? So he had a really tough time during soccer season because it was ragweed. So it was a combination of allergies would make the asthma worse. And again, it was we just did everything that we could naturally. I remember doing massage on his to clear the lymph channels. We would do essential oils. We would do the big pots of water with the boiling water with eucalyptus and peppermint to open up the passages. We just tried everything, and he was so willing to try so many things, which was really beautiful because, he didn't fight us. He was just like, sure, I'll try it. I want to feel better. And it was a process. And, even when he went to college, I remember packing his kit. He's probably one of the few college kids that would go with, essential oils and things. And, it sounds funny now, but 15 years ago, it was hard to find almond milk and coconut milk. Yeah. Now you see it everywhere. There's lots of non-dairy choices, but at the time, it was coconut milk. I would get coconut milk in a can and add water to it to make it lighter, to make it light coconut milk, so it was, so it's a learning curve. And you said it before, I think that everybody needs to be their own advocate, and parents need to be an advocate for their kids and not just go along with the system. Because I really do believe that allopathic medicine is there for a reason. It's for crisis. And we need it. We need it when there's a crisis, but for prevention, to not get to that point, we need to take that on ourselves.
Yes,
we need to take care of our bodies, and we need to create that balance so that we don't have the challenges.
Yeah, that's so great. And what I see in this are results. See, you can't argue with results. So, doctors may say, oh, no. Oh, you can't. Oh, taking dairy. Oh, come on. Well, look what happens. Okay. Or what you did with the Hashimoto's. I mean, you go to your doctor. Oh, this is what I'm doing. Oh, no. Well, what do you mean? No, it's working. I feel good. I mean, I feel better. Oh, no, you can't do that. Oh my goodness, whatever. But like you said, there's a balance. Rosie has a son who's a surgeon. Okay. You need surgeons. We need surgeons. We need things, when something needs to be done. I looked and I thought about surgery when I was younger, and when I was early in my career, and I did an internship in surgery, but it wasn't for me. That wasn't what I was going to, because for me, uh, we need surgeons, obviously, but for me, I felt that I was more aligned to empowering people, as we talked about, talking with people, getting to know all about the mind, body, spirit, and there's not enough time when you have crisis, when you're in the OR or whatever, when you have to
Yeah.
do a procedure, you have to take something out, or you have to repair something. You just got to do it, right? But for me, it was more aligned with who I was and what I wanted to do. So, but as Rosie said, we need doctors, we need allopathic medicine, but to be your own advocate. And I was actually on somebody else's podcast yesterday who invited me, and he was asking me about that. Uh, yeah, and I told him that you do need doctors, but he asked me, well, what can you say to people to get the most out of a doctor's visit? And I said, well, you have to be your own advocate. You have to educate yourself. You have to be like ChatGPT when you go to the doctor, right? Okay. You have to prompt the doctor, give the right prompts, because ChatGPT is an awesome tool if you supply it with the right prompts. If you go into the doctor and say, oh, I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, I want a holistic approach, I don't want to take medicine, you're all over the place. I mean, but if you do your own research, if you get educated on it and you narrow it down and you ask maybe 3 prompt questions, you don't come in with a laundry list that, oh, look what I found on the internet, right? And that's a great way to get what you want, because doctors don't have time. Most doctors, and those of you who listen to my podcast know that I changed my practice so I would have time to do all those things, so I could address the whole mind, body, spirit with my patients. And talking about it, you know, Rosie's talking about, and we're talking about how we can get the body in shape and working properly, which has a lot to do with how mindful we are and how we can do our own research and be our own advocates. And there's a piece that I'd like to go into now, because I think it's a really important, spirituality in medicine, and most doctors don't consider that. Yet, if you think about it, you usually go to doctors to be healthy so you can live a long life, because we all know we're going to die, and the fear of death grips so many people and really drives so many people about throughout their lives. And so we all go to a doctor. When we're going to a doctor, we're not just in a vacuum. We come in with such a life of a rich life that includes how we look at what's out there, how we look at what we can't see, how we look at death, how we perceive God and our relationship with God. Or for many people who don't have that relationship with God, what does that mean to their life and their health? Because I have to say, just from my own belief and my own faith in God, that has helped me enormously, taking care of my body, making the right decision or right decisions for myself and my family. And so how does that kind of, bring all of this together with your concentration on taking care of your nutrition and your fitness and taking care of your body and being mindful? Tell us a little bit about how the spiritual piece started to kind of come in. I know it was always there, but how did it start kind of becoming a mainstay in your lifestyle and how you approached your life and your health and your wellness?
So I started realizing that it's all connected, right? I knew that when I would run for a long distance, I felt this peace.
Mm,
And when I ran in the woods, when I was in nature, I felt this enormous peace,
Mm.
and I wouldn't listen to music. I would just be in this meditative, the run became like this meditative practice for me. And so it started with my running,
Mm.
and then continued on with my yoga. And I'm such a huge believer in meditation and contemplation and being silent. It's a spiritual gift, to actually be silent, to actually hear God's voice, because there's so much noise in the world
Mm.
that we have to make it a practice to get into that space where we can turn down the outside noise so that we can hear the divine inside, right?
Mm.
Like the leading. And that's how the body, mind, and spirit works. And part of what I do is, I do wellness retreats. That's like one of the main things that I've been doing now for my clients, is bringing body, mind, and spirit together, because we're practicing yoga where it's an experiential weekend, because we're experiencing meditation and contemplation. I have a 2-hour silence and solitude practice.
Wow. Okay.
Where people walk on the beach. We literally will walk by each other and not say a word. You can bow, you can do things, but it's a silence and solitude practice, which people love, because in our everyday life, we don't do that.
Mm.
We're not silent enough. We're not by ourselves. And, a lot of people will say that they fill up the time because it makes them feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a process in order to be able to get out of your own way, so that you can be silent and hear that still small voice inside.
Mm.
Right. So that's how it's developed for me. And
Yeah.
in that time, I have realized that I've been doing it all along and
Right.
didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
in the morning, I wake up. Even years ago, I would wake up and be like, oh, okay, how am I feeling in my body today?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got a little ache here. I got a little pain there. I got that. But like, the body awareness is so important, and you can't know until you're still.
Mm.
And then I feel like whenever I'm struggling with with anything, I should say, a decision, whatever, I go into that space, that prayer time, right? That contemplation, and it's where God speaks to me.
Mm.
And so, that's the
Yeah.
beauty
Yeah.
of the practice.
Yeah, I love that. I think back of when I was always, my mother was considered kind of kooky, all right, but she was, one of the things, especially in the Jewish community, unlike the Christian community, there's not a lot of talk about a personal relationship with God. But my mother, the kooky one, right, taught me about a personal relationship with God, not telling me about it, but just the way she talked about God. And so I always had this feeling. And I remember when I was doing karate in my early 20s during medical school, that's when I first started meditating. And I remember there was a woman in our class who was Catholic, and she was a vital member of our class. She's part of it. But toward the end of her, like after a few years, she started feeling that it was getting in the way of, it was almost interfering with her relationship with the Catholic Church, because she thought it was kind of woo-woo in a sense, but me, and that's kind of like the devout Judaism with doesn't encourage the personal relationship, and Catholicism doesn't necessarily. You have to go through a number of levels before you can ever think about talking to God or praying to God or asking. But for me, the product of a kooky Jewish mom, right? It opened up the door to hearing that still quiet voice, that Holy Spirit. And so for me, it happened when I was meditating one day, and I had the meditation I would do where I would, and I wrote about it in my books, that I would go down into like an elevator, bring me down very deep, and the doors would open. And the first time I did that, the doors opened. And this is, people are going to say, oh, why am I going to listen to this wacko, right? He's a nutcase. I'm not going to, he's schizophrenic, right? With what I'm going to tell you next. But okay, so the doors opened. And what I saw as I walked onto this, almost like a Garden of Eden, if you would imagine the Garden of Eden would look like, and there was a rock on my left, and on that rock stood a tiny man, okay, who hopped off the rock and introduced himself to me as Abe. And so Abe became my guide, my inner guidance, my Holy Spirit, my connection with, I feel, God and the divine throughout my life from that point on. And it wasn't until like 20 or 30 years later when I was listening to, my listeners may know of Esther Hicks, who started calling herself Abraham Hicks, because she told almost an identical story about how she came in touch with her guide Abraham, and how now what her career, she was would go and talk and say how Abraham was channeling through her, and she'd, through Hay House and many other, she'd give these huge, and she still does, I think, huge conferences where people listen to her, and she's channeling Abraham. And for me, I never felt as though I was somehow special. I felt, and as you're talking about getting quiet and listening to that quiet voice, that divine voice guiding you, we all are capable of that. We all have the ability, because we are God's children. We are made in God's image. And so if that's the case, then so my saying is, God is in everyone or God is in no one. Because if you believe in God truly, you have to believe that everyone has the Spirit of God in them. So what you're talking about, getting quiet and being able to hear that, that's what I did at that point. And once you connect with that, you really never lose it. It's always accessible.
And you want more, and you want
Yes.
more.
Yes.
You want more.
Yeah.
So it becomes a practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you've used that, well, in your own life. Well, actually, I'm gonna say about, because I know a little bit about Rosie's personal life, and I'm going to mention the idea. Rosie's been in a committed relationship and marriage for many, many years, as I have. And one of the things that in mind, body, spirit, and in a good grounded life, there are certain aspects of that. And one of them is loyalty. And we all have our ups and downs in life. And there are so many things that can throw us off. But in order to be balanced in mind, body, spirit, we have to acknowledge that we all have these primitive instincts, these animalistic instincts, which are tugging and are taking you away from loyalty, especially with men, because men in the animal world, most male species, they have to spread their seed and procreate. So many men have this animalistic drive, but in order to be balanced in mind, body, spirit, loyalty and commitment is so vital. And so I just wanted to say that, because you and Brian really are the epitome. And I know it's not all roses and rainbows and unicorns. Okay. I mean, I know, because I'm in a relationship we're going to be married 35 years. And before that, we knew each other for 4 or 5 years before that, whatever. So, so it's not all rosy, whatever, but we do it. We stick it out and we're committed because we know that will rip apart the foundation of mind, body, spirit. So, but getting back to my question, what you were saying, what we're talking about is now that you kind of reheard or heard that inner guidance. Tell us about how that guides you in your life and now in your practice with your yoga faith and sharing that with other people, other women especially.
Yeah, so I try to bring that experience to other women because it was so impactful for me. It's, bringing it all together, the body, mind, and spirit, especially through a yoga practice. And, again, going back to the retreats, being away, stepping away from your life is so important. And Brian, my husband, completely supports that because we do the same thing and we used to do the same thing. Part of having a healthy marriage and relationship is spending time together and not just focusing just on the family, but you have to focus on your relationship the whole time. So when the kids go off, there's something left. There's still a great core relationship, like we're friends, we're partners, we're better together. Right. And so that you need to worry. You can't put that on hold. I know a lot of people put it on hold and then all of a sudden their kids go off to college and then it's like, oh wait, I am married.
Right. Yeah.
So, that's part of it. And that's, again, choices, lifestyle choices, right? You choose to work on your relationship all throughout. And you, just like you choose good foods and you choose to move every day and you choose a spiritual practice, you make choices every day that'll either, bring life to your years or not. And so that's kind of, Brian and I think very, he always says, he's got his built-in nutritionist and personal trainer,
right.
Living with them. Right. Right. So, we work hard together and we're committed in relationship, but we're also committed to encourage and inspire each other and our family to stay healthy. So that's super important. And then going back to the yoga and the faith part of it and sharing this with other women, when I talked about going to teacher training in 2017 and had a really just an incredible experience, probably similar to your elevator story, but mine was I opened a door to this purple light. It was this beautiful purple light.
Wow.
Mine was not down in an elevator, but like I was being lifted up. And then this black door opened up and it was this beautiful purple light. And I didn't hear an audible voice. I felt the audible voice saying, I've been preparing you all this time.
Wow.
I want you to bring everything together. And it was it was an epiphany. It wasn't kind of an epiphany. That was the epiphany. It was, I had my party planning. I had my nutrition, my movement as a running coach and a personal trainer, and now my spiritual yoga to bring them all together to have experiential weekends for women that they can experience all of this, what they can with, great food all weekend long, yoga, walks on the beach, watching the sunrise, watching the sunset, and just learning how to meditate and and be present and prayerful 24 hours a day, right? Because that's what
Yes.
we're called to do. And it was just so beautiful and powerful that I came home and I was just like, well, I guess I am going to have to teach yoga then.
Right.
Because I went for just the knowledge so that I would understand it and I would understand it better and how this was going to fit into my life. And yeah, no, God was like, nope, you're taking this direction now.
Wow.
And, Charlie, it's just amazing because when you have an open heart and an open mind to be able to listen to this, you can pivot more easily than when we have our fists closed around our ideas and just holding on tight, right?
Yes.
So that is probably one of my things that I try to share and teach people is, to begin embracing that open heart, open mind so that things can flow more easily to you. Whatever your belief system is, it's the same. It's that open heart, open mind. Be open to seeing things differently, right?
Yeah.
Because we are all children of God, but yet we're all connected. We're all brothers and sisters, no matter where you were born, where you came from. We are all connected.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So,
No, I love that. And it again, when I was talking about results when you were doing the physical, doing what you're doing and learning what you're learning and teaching what you're teaching, you're getting results in yourself and other people. So, a lot of people may be, like you said, rigid and say, oh, well, this doesn't fit the narrative, or this doesn't fit what maybe the scripture says exactly. But what you're doing is you're helping people open their many blocks that they may have been having to be able to connect with God in a personal way. And you're opening the door for them to be able to live a more peaceful life. And by doing that, the way they're interacting with other people is beautiful, because if they're more peaceful, they're going to be interacting with their family, their friends, their society at large in a more peaceful way, in a more loving way, in a more open way. And I think, by doing that, it really is embodying what we all believe that God would want, that Jesus would want, that who you pray to would want. And again, it's results that you can't argue with results. And, I would think you mentioned that, trying to be mindful and prayerful throughout the day. Sometimes it's hard for people to do it the whole day. So, like you said, you would wake up and you kind of check in, and that's a good kind of reminder for people to because I know that's what I do. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do before I look at my phone, before I do anything, I do a very distinct prayer, the Jewish prayer called the Shema. I will do that. Then I will pray in English to God and meditate on certain things. And when I go to sleep at night, the same thing. And that's to ground us in and understanding that there is a lot more than it's humbling ourselves. There's more to us, and by doing that, it can really help. And what you're doing, I know you've developed really a practical approach. And what we do need is, yes, the spiritual world is kind of impractical, illogical, or supernatural, but in order for us to get to connect with the spiritual world, sometimes we have to do logical, practical things. And I know that you're developing kind of a practical way to help people get, in touch with their mind, body, and spirit. And one of the things that that you've created recently, it seems like that. If you can tell us a little bit more about what you've developed and what you've just published.
Yeah. So, what I do at the retreats is, or in my yoga classes, right? Because I teach yoga here on the island, is I try to encourage and inspire people to listen, again, with that open heart, that open mind, but listen to their body, and also listen to the divine,
yes,
to God speaking to them, right? So one of the things that I have found myself over and over repeating is notice what you notice. And it's been like, ask any of my students, and like, that's like my trademark, notice what you notice. And it's just a simple reminder of like noticing what you're actually noticing, because so much of our day, we're not in the present moment, right? We're on our phones, we're on our computers, in conversations, we're not in the present moment. And it's hard to notice things when you're not in the present moment. So I've created a journal, which is just a compilation of different practices. So it's, I would say, probably 10 to 15 years that I've been using a template of this just page that I use with my clients, where they'll write everything down that they eat, the time they eat it, how much they drink, all different things. And a few years ago, as I needed more information from my clients, I kept adding things to this form. So, and I would give it to them. And then my clients would come to the phone, because I do my calls on the phone, and they would come with like a wad of papers because it's one paper per. And I'd be like, okay, so about 2 weeks ago, you said that, you had a headache, and let's talk about that. And they'll be like, trying to get back to the page where like, let's see what you're trying to figure out. Like, did you sleep the night before? How was your elimination? What was the weather like? Because, sometimes headaches are because it's raining or there's a thunderstorm in the air, And so I realized that I needed to kind of put it in a book form. And so that's what I've done. And I've come up with this Notice What You Notice,
awesome,
which is body, mind, and spirit. And it gives you the ability to be able to write what you notice every day: your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, the time that you're eating, the environment, noticing if you're rushed, right? Like just writing a note. I did eat, but I ate in my car. And I instruct them at the beginning to notice without judgment, because what we're trying to do with this journal, or what you're trying to do, again, being your own advocate, this would be a great tool to bring to your doctor's office, to be able to have a discussion with them, or a great tool to bring to your therapist, or even a great tool to bring if you are meeting with a nutrition consultant, because it'll be able to say, okay, so you're suffering from headaches. Let's take a look what you've been eating, or how you've been sleeping,
yes,
or how much water you've been drinking, right? There's little place to put how much water you drink, what your activities were today, right? So did you move? Did you not move? And what we started our conversation was about the lifestyle choices, and every choice that you make could be either life-giving or not, right? So this is evidence. Are the choices you're making life-giving or not? And there's the ability to look back at those choices and see how they're changing you.
Yeah.
And then, I have some inspirational, spiritual things to just, throughout, and a prayer. And my hope is that the person who holds this book begins to really notice their body in a way that they can begin to connect that body awareness, that body, mind, and spirit, and how we need to be connected to all three in order for true wellness, for true healing to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I love it.
my
Yeah.
goal.
And you'll give me all the links. I'll put that in the description of the podcast so people can know how to get in touch with you and get the book. And, when you're talking about that, it brings to mind something that when I was in college, I was very interested in Pythagoras. And Pythagoras, people think about the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I was a math major in college, but we had to write a book, not a book. We had to write an essay to get into our senior year that combined different disciplines. So I chose history and mathematics, and I studied Pythagoras. And Pythagoras had what really the Pythagorean program in like 500 BC. He was a student of Plato, and he had the idea that we as humans can transmigrate, and meaning basically our souls can leave our body, and when we die and go somewhere else. And that was kind of his interpretation. But what he said was that in order to do that, in order for us to truly elevate into the illogical, the supernatural world, we had to first structure and understand the logic in our real world. And, I think it's very interesting that, and that's what mathematics does. It structures us in the world that God created in a very logical, five senses way. And sometimes we need guidance in that logic. We have to be practical. We have to be logical. And only when we can get grounded and we can be I have a saying that we can only reach for the stars when we have both feet firmly planted on the ground. And by firmly planting it on the ground, that's the soil, that's the real world, that's our five senses, that's kind of logic. And we have to think about it like that. And when I look at a journal like this, is it's getting people to deal with real stuff. Well, there's different apps like MyFitnessPal, where you enter, and I did a podcast with a woman who lost 100 pounds just by finding out how many calories she needs to maintain her weight, and then how much calories she needs to actually start losing weight. And she did that all by herself because it was very logical, very structured. It was real. And she became more fit and more healthy that way. It wasn't just about losing weight. So I love that you've created that, because that's something that somebody could actually hold on to. And especially if they're struggling with making their spiritual practice getting results, this can, I think, help them. What would you think? What do you say about that? Would you think that that's important piece of it?
Yeah, I do think it is the logical piece, but it is the spiritual component when you're actually practicing the pause, is what I call it. Pausing to actually be in the present moment, so that you can understand what's going on. Because I mean, Charlie, our body gives us signs and symptoms all the time. All the time, right? And like the beginning of the conversation, like, and if you go too far, it's going to go into fear and flight. And be like, okay, I'm stopping you short, right? And that's usually when we get sick. And I call it God just benches you for a little while,
right.
like when you get
I love that. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
No, but practicing the pause is, super, super important in, both logic, because it is logic, and in the looking at symptoms. But, you know, I can't tell you how many times I talk to people and I'm like, well, how long has that been going on? And they're like, I don't know.
Mm.
A long time. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
And we're just dealing with it now.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had lots
Oh,
of things like that
yes,
too, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have a thing now where, um, if I think it happened 2 years ago, it happened 5 years ago. Okay. I mean, it's just,
Right?
yeah. I mean, I'll now add on a few years. If somebody asks me, when did that happen? And I think I said, oh no, that's 6 years ago. Right. And I'm usually right.
And
You know.
especially with COVID, right? We just
Oh, yes.
lost a huge chunk of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so Rosie, I love what you're doing and sharing that with my audience. It's just, I really think it's vital to talk with people who really put together and understand the importance of the balance of mind, body, and spirit, and how without the three, you're really not grounded in the real world, in the physical world, in a healthy way, in a prosperous way. So, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to, hopefully, my listeners will tap into some of the resources that you've created. That would be great.
Yeah,
So
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, it's so great.
yeah. So I'm going to end the podcast right now by, as I always do, as you know, Dr. Charles, aka Coach MD, urging you to stay strong in mind, in body, and especially right here in soul. Bye for now.